Would I be the a-hole if I kept my father's money instead of giving it to his wife? Original post. After my parents got divorced, my dad started dating Betty. Everything started okay, but Betty became jealous when my dad spent time with me. She was never abusive, just passive-aggressive and saved her worst comments for when he wasn't around. I learned I can't trust her, but I am polite to her. Betty has a son, Frank, who is very greedy. When she met my dad, Betty stopped giving him everything he wanted. In 2009, he and my dad had an argument that ended with then 40-year-old Frank punching my then 70-year-old dad. My dad died a few months ago. The will was joint, so the estate goes to Betty, and once she dies, what's left will be divided between me, my brother Alan, and Frank. It's unlikely me or Alan will see any of it, because Frank will drain her until there's nothing left, which has already started. They got married in 1996, and in 2006, Dad changed the beneficiary on his IRA to only me. It's not part of the estate. She is very nervous about the IRA. My dad was fairly wealthy, so between his estate, her retirement accounts, and then selling their house for almost $1 million, she is not going to starve, but she is still nervous. Alan called me with all this info because the estate lawyer is sending me a letter about it. Betty told him not to tell me anything, but he felt he had to. Haven't gotten the letter yet, but they may be setting up a trust that she'll want me to sign the IRA into. I expect a guilt trip about doing the right thing and following his wishes. But the reason they had a joint will is because they couldn't agree on any other kind of split, as my dad didn't like Frank, and Betty doesn't like me. If I thought my dad had dementia, I might believe the IRA was missed, but he was very meticulous. It feels like making me beneficiary was his way of providing for me, knowing this would happen. It does not make financial sense for me to give the money to the estate and end up with 25% of whatever pittance is left, when I could have 50% of whatever is in the IRA now. I would split it with Alan. My other reason for not wanting to share is that I'm currently pregnant, and having this money would make being a stay-at-home mom easier, and baby would get a jump start on her college fund. Would I be the a-hole if I didn't give this money back to the estate and share it with my brother? I might be the butt phase because while I want to be ethical, I'm having some schadenfreude over being in control after she's treated me poorly for 30 years. I also don't need the money, but she doesn't either. So, other info. I don't know why she wouldn't call me directly. Either the lawyer said not to, or this is another example of her not treating me as an adult. My brother is my half-brother. He was estranged and came back into our lives in 2008. I feel like he would have been on the IRA too, after my brother came back into our lives. But before he had changed his will, my dad always had asked me to be fair with him, so I would give him his share. Now for the top comments before reading the first update. Not stay home. Your father changed it years ago. He wanted you to have that money. She has stuff left from him. Split it with your brother and live happily ever after. You don't owe her anything. But her trying to hide info from you gives off so many red flags. Actually, it very well could be illegal to sign it over to the will. There are rules about these things, and most won't be enforced unless it comes to the government's attention. But my grandfather actually wasn't particularly clear on some things, and if we'd reclaimed some things into his estate, it could have been viewed as tax evasion. Now, a good executor should know this, but greed makes people do dumb things sometimes. Under no circumstances sign the IRA into a trust. It was intended by your father to go directly to you and for Ellen. My dad always had asked me to be fair with him. If he had wanted it to go to Betty and her brat, he would have changed the beneficiary. That money was intended for you and your baby. I hope he/she is born healthy and happy. Long life and happiness to you both. Not stay home. The will was joint, so the estate goes to Betty, and once she dies, what's left will be divided between me, my brother Alan, and Frank. Unless your father was very careful in how he legally arranged things, there will be nothing stopping Betty from changing her will and leaving it all to Frank. It happens far too often. That might be why your father decided to leave the IRA to you, because otherwise you may get nothing. Yeah, my internet research without having the will in front of me or a law degree has been giving me differing opinions in what she could do with it. It all depends on how it's written, but I really don't see her wanting to leave me with anything, judging by past behavior patterns. Not stay home. Keep the money. Your father did this for a reason. Now for the first update. I got my mystery letter. It was pretty much what I expected. Basically, please give me the money because it's obvious that your dad thought this would be covered by the will. It demands for all the money to come to me, then filter down to you kids. Complete with a guilt-trippy paragraph about how they lived on their social security and withdrawing from their IRAs, and neither of them have a pension or other income. And I quote, "Only what we had saved over the years." There's also a line about how you can see that there is a large value to the items gifted to you and Ellen, which I'm not going to argue with exactly, except that I sincerely wonder if she thinks I'm an idiot and doesn't realize I know how to add. She just sold their house for almost $1 million. Or that I don't know what the apartment in Italy is worth, about $350,000. I find it very difficult to believe that my father didn't also have savings accounts / mutual funds, plus she's going to get widow survivor benefits in addition to her own benefits from Social Security. The items Alan and I were gifted come nowhere close to that. I think altogether, there is a car involved. We're divvying up maybe $100,000 worth of stuff. Maybe. If we can get a good price for the car. With just 2 sales, she could buy a house for $200,000 to $300,000 near her son and still have plenty to live on. But she seems to have her heart set on buying a house by the beach, which doesn't feel very much like my problem. From her letter, you'd think that this IRA has millions of dollars in it that she desperately needs to survive. But no. She tells me that it's worth about $55,000. That's 5% of just what she sold the house for. I genuinely think it's both pitiful and pathetic that she would just let it go. But I'm sure she has Frank whispering in her ear about making sure she gets everything she's entitled to. But now I do have a copy of the will. 2 things stand out from what she sent me. 1, the letter isn't on the lawyer's stationery, so there's been no official demand of any sort that I feel like it's unlikely that I'll get one. 2, nowhere in the will does it say that she couldn't just rewrite her will and give everything to Frank. Like I said in my last post, I don't trust her in the slightest. So I've contacted an estate lawyer so I can determine my next steps. Thanks for being here with me on this ride. I'll update again if there's anything more to say. She tells me that it's worth $55,000. Side-eyeing that one, it would be in her best interest to lie. It's good that he contacted an attorney to deal with her. And of course, when all is said and done, there's no reason you have to be in touch with her at all. You can let all communication go through the attorney. Not they whole. I would have reported her to the SSA, since you can't legally have more than $2,000 in the bank account. That is incorrect. Social Security payouts are based upon what you paid in during your work life. They are not need-based, they're not a form of welfare. It's completely irrelevant how much you have in the bank. You may be thinking of SSI, which is for disabled people and which is a needs-based thing. Thank you for being so sensible. I hate to see people get shafted in inheritance situations because they trust others to do the right thing later. Rarely does the right thing ever get done in the end. Now for the second update. There's not a whole lot to update on as for better or for worse. I haven't heard from my stepmother in months, but I suppose this is some sort of closure for people who care. About a week after I got the letter, she sent me a text message asking if I'd gotten the letter and if I'd made a decision. I said yes and no respectively. She hasn't contacted me since, so nothing since August. Since then, I've also had my baby 5 weeks early, so it's not like I have a lot of brain power to spend on her. I spoke with an estate attorney, and she confirmed that there's nothing legally my stepmother could do to get the IRA, so I was in the clear there. She also confirms that joint wills don't really exist anymore. So if my stepmother wanted to, she could just rewrite her will to exclude me, or me and Ellen, or whatever she wanted to do. This left me with the interesting problem of how do I get the money, considering I didn't know where it was. And I didn't really want to contact my stepmother and say, I am disinclined to acquiesce to your request, so tell me how to get my money. Because I felt like that would open up to a can of, I'm not going to tell you until you agree to sign it over to me. Luckily for me, the lawyer I spoke to was also the son of an old Italian man like my father. It mentioned that these old Italian men tend to pick a bank and never change. So I googled around for investment firms until I saw a name that rang a bell and I went, aha! Long story short, the IRA is now in my name. Had to take a disbursement for this year and sent half to Ellen. My stepmother has moved a couple of times, so I don't know her address to send my response letter to. And like I said, She hasn't contacted me since August, so I'm considering my hands washed of it unless she actually tries. So all's well that ends well for me. Alan, on the other hand, is still having to deal with her because of the estate. He's meeting with the estate lawyer tomorrow to get some questions answered, so I'll be interested in hearing what happens. One of the things she had mentioned to him is that she needs a car that my father left to Alan and I, appraised because of something, is worth over $5 million. The estate, I'm guessing, because there's no way the car is worth this much. She says there are tax implications, which doesn't make sense to me. But if she's really dealing with a $5 million estate, it's super extra petty that she was coming after me for $55,000. Now for the comments before the last update. Glad to hear that at least the IRA is in the right hands, and congrats on your baby. Hope you're both happy and healthy. Thank you. We both are doing just fine. Despite her being early, there was no NICU stay or any complications for me. Congrats on the baby. The estate tax exemption is currently $11.7 million per person, though I've heard that it might drop back down to the $3 million range. When someone dies, the widowed spouse can transfer their exemption to the surviving spouse. In other words, while it never hurts to get an appraisal when someone passes, I doubt it would end up having any tax implications. Thank you. And that's what I thought I remembered from when my mom died. So the car would have to be worth $5 million on top of $6.7 million she would already have for there to be any tax issues, if I'm understanding correctly. The car was worth somewhere between $35,000 to $50,000, so no, probably not going to make a difference. It's also weird that she's focused on how much the car is worth, as if it will make a difference, and not the vintage farm equipment he left me, which is also only worth maybe $5,000 tops. Because, like, if we're appraising things, shouldn't we appraise everything? I find it telling that she saved all her hatred for you and not your brother. I'd say it's because I didn't grow up with her. He's 20 years older than I am, but she's also misogynistic anyway. It's one of those things that I feel like I can't explain to people, because on its own it doesn't mean much, but she treats me markedly differently when I have a man than when I don't. If I don't, she acts like I'm a little better than a child. Oh, and when she was asking about if I had made a decision, she asked if I had talked to my husband about it. I told him and his response was, "Why would you talk to me about it? It's not my money." I also find it weird that presumably she'd think my husband would respond with, "Oh yeah, definitely give her the money." So glad to hear you got that sorted. And congrats on your baby. My husband and I went 3 years of legal drama dealing with his mother's greedy ex-husband, and it was a nightmare that ended with the children getting sweet FA for what was left to them by their parents. So consider yourself lucky it's over with. And now for the last update. I'm not sure if I'm making this post for me or for you guys, but at least this is a chronicle of the issue in case anyone asks me about it later. After my last update, there was silence for a while. Then my stepmother sent me a Christmas card with another letter inside it, but I'm sure that particular irony was lost on her. In it, she explained what she was going to use the money for health insurance payments, but once again acting like this money is what's keeping her from the brink of starvation. This letter, however, had a return address, so I did what any red-blooded millennial would do, and Googled it. One visit to the Country Deed website later confirmed for me that she has bought a beach house. Well, it's not on a beach. It's in a beach town, being purposefully vague here, for $745,000. She ended the letter by saying that she had talked to my cousin who told her that I saw the money as being able to continue my father's memory, and what she felt I should accept. Her books, photo albums, etc. because those are my father's memory. But that she'll discard them if she didn't hear from me by the end of the year, because it just proves I'm all about the money and nothing else. I'm sure the irony of me being all about the money while offering to replace it with material things while really wanting me to give her money is also lost on her. Also, the attempting to sell me memories was a nice touch. As I finally had an address to respond to, I wrote what my BFF described as the most polite bridge burning ever and sent it off before her deadline. She called yesterday, which I did not answer. She left a message saying that she just received my letter that day. I know the USPS sucks right now, but almost 2 weeks for a letter? And to call her back so she could clear some things up. Her tone was very hostile, so I'm disinclined to call her back. Honestly, I don't really want to hear what she has to say, and I'm not sure why she would think I would. Like, there's really nothing she could say that would convince me to give her the money. And she'll probably just yell at me like I'm the kid she still thinks I am. Hopefully this doesn't escalate. And if it does, I'll update. Block her from your phone, email, and social media and get on with your life. There is nothing she can do to you legally, so just ghost her. I'm sorry your father married such a miserable witch. Let her treat his kids so terribly. What an a-hole. This is what I'm leaning toward, but I can't lie and say it doesn't give me a sort of sick sense of satisfaction from her attempts to contact me. My BFF thinks she's a narcissist, and I imagine my lack of contact infuriates her. I spent a really long time not trying to rile her up for my dad's sake, but he's gone now, so I feel less inclined to bow to her whims. What is there to clear up? Lol. Her debts. Ha ha ha. Nothing else. Honestly, I would be compelled to call her in order to hear what she wants to clear up. Your father made a very specific decision about his IRA after he was married to this woman. As I think she has no legal claim to the money. Aren't you curious to hear what more she possibly thinks there is to discuss? It's a bad idea to engage this level of crazy. I'm curious about what your letter said. I tell her that you better lose your number or you will try to lay claim to her beach house. Obviously can't do that, but maybe the threat with the knowledge that you got her money-grabbing number will get her to crawl back in her hole. She's either pissing through the money, or she promised Sonny Boy the car and IRA, and thought you and your brother would just blindly sign everything over her.